So yeah, just as implied in the title, I gathered a bunch of technology and gadgets from popular movies and put them into a bracket. And we're going to be judging them by how useful they would be in a zombie apocalypse. As for our zombies, I don't want them to be Plants vs. Zombies levels of weak, but I don't want them to be 28 Days Later levels of strong. We'll meet somewhere in the middle, say their average strength they can run. First one we have is the Spider-Man web shooter versus Freddy Krueger's glove. Now, let's start off with the Freddy Krueger glove. And hey, no disrespect to Freddy, this weapon is awesome. But if a zombie apocalypse starts and this is my only weapon, I'm cooked. Like, imagine actually trying to fight with this. You can't. The only reason this works for Freddy is because he's like, whatever he is. It's because he has the powers of the dream world that it works. But like, if this stabs into flesh or something, it gets stuck, it just pulls off your hand and now you're weaponless. So it couldn't really stab, and if you try to slash, you have the risk of it just coming off your hand. This thing's kinda useless. Compare that to Spider-Man's web. Quite broken. One, it's wrist mounted, so you don't need a holster. It can be used at long range, or even short range, I guess. It ensnares. You can just trap somebody, like onto a wall or something. You could use it to throw somebody. You could use it long range, pull them closer, and then use it again with your other hand. You can use it to travel. You could swing from something to hit your opponent, and many more. Only thing is that unless it breaks, you don't have to like recharge the Freddy glove. You have to put new web fluid in the web shooters. But overall, I'm giving it to the web shooter. Next matchup, Jason's machete and Captain America's shield. Let's start with the machete. You can use it to impale or slash. And spoiler alert, but out of the two, I'd say it's more lethal. It really depends on the machete, but if it doesn't have a firm grip, if you get blood on it, it can slip right out of your hand. All attack, no defend. It can only be used at close range, and probably doesn't have a holder, but it's definitely gonna hurt. Now let's look at Cap. So it's, well, obviously used to defend, but what's unique about Cap's shield is it can also be used for offense, both at long and close range. As demonstrated by John Walker, it can be quite lethal, but it is significantly less lethal than Jason's machete. It can take out multiple opponents at the same time, and you always have to hold it as it straps to the arm or the back. It's more versatile but less lethal. I think the real thing here is if we're with a group or not. Because if we are, I would take the Cap shield, as long as somebody else has something like a gun or something. I'm sorry, Cap, but just with the shield, you have to spend more time on each opponent, so I gotta give it to Jason's machete. Next one we have is Thor's hammer or Wolverine's claws. Next one we have is Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, or Wolverine's claws. Let's start with Thor. The thing is, high risk, high reward. It's big and heavy, and hard to swing around. But the good side of this is that if you're able to land a solid hit, it's game over. The other thing we have here, I'm kind of conflicted on. Does it have lightning power? I say it doesn't. It really should come from Thor, right? And we're not Thor, so theoretically, we shouldn't even be able to lift this thing. But assuming that it doesn't have the spell or whatever on it, it should be, like if it was like a replica or something, I don't know. But you know, it's heavy, painful to get hit with, kind of impractical though. What's cool about it is it can be used as long or close range. If you throw it, it will come back to you. And it doesn't need like a holster or anything, so you can just leave it anywhere. And whenever you need it, you just need to outstretch your arm and catch it. But overall, I don't think this would work too well. Now let's look at Wolverine's claws. This one's also a little tough. Do you just grab him and basically just have 3 knives in between your knuckles? Like this, where you just grab it and then you have it like that? Because the problem with that is that these blunt ends kind of go into your hand. And I imagine if you punch enough things with enough force, it could break one or more of your fingers. And I only say that because we're not Wolverine, and they're not inside of our bodies. So I'm going to say happy medium here. In Deadpool and Wolverine, there's a scene where, if you haven't seen the movie, Deadpool finds the adamantium skeleton of Logan after he died. He, like, steals, like, the claws and, like, his, like, forearm bones. I don't know really how that worked. But, you know, superhero movie logic. and he fastened them to his arms. They're still fully functional and retractable, but they're just not inside of his body. My point here is, they're super practical. Kind of. You see, you can't use it at a long range. You have to get up and close and personal. This would work for Wolverine, but not us. We don't have a healing factor. 2, if one of those claws gets stuck in some flesh, and we can't get it out, like we see in Deadpool and Wolverine, then we're kinda screwed. These are very dangerous, and could absolutely butcher people. And they're fast, but there's a lot of room for error. But even at that, it's close, but I'll still give it to the Wolverine claws. Next matchup we have is Winter Soldier's arm and Daredevil's billy clubs. And it's just now dawning on me that these are both absolutely useless. Let's start with Daredevil. In theory, this is an absolute win. They're easily concealable, folding up and going on the side of the leg like this. They can be used as melee or long range. They can also be joined together to be used as a bow staff. There's also inexplicably a rope, which should contradict each other, right? And even though there's only one rope, he can somehow swing like Spider-Man. It's superhero logic, man. But notice they're blunt. They're non-lethal, because Daredevil doesn't kill people. Meaning that unless they were modified, this would be kinda useless in a zombie apocalypse. I think it would be kinda hard to kill somebody with this. Now, let's take a look at Winter Soldier's arm. In theory, this should be great. Basically gives you super strength. You don't have to worry about storage, and it's pretty durable. What's the problem with this? You already have to be an amputee. Unless you already are, you would have to cut off your arm to use this. Also, this can only be used at close range, and depending on the version, his arm can be taken off. I'm thinking the one from Winter Soldier up until Civil War, which seemed to take a lot of power to take off. But the one from Infinity War on seems like it didn't take too much effort, so you have a risk of losing it as well. Absolutely useless. So reluctantly, I have to give it to Daredevil. This'll be a fun one. Iron Man's suit or a lightsaber. So let's start with the lightsaber. In contrast to Iron Man's suit, it never needs to charge. In theory, it should be pretty light, no pun intended, but you can't make any error whatsoever, or you will lose a part of your body. It's usually stored, like on your belt, and I'm not giving us the Force. I'm just saying we are regular people that happen to have a lightsaber in this scenario. It's highly lethal, but assuming we don't have the Force, it can only be used at close range. Now let's compare it to Iron Man's suit. So if we're away from technology, civilization is in ruins and whatnot, we're kind of at a big disadvantage here. Without battery or charging or whatever, the suit's gonna die. Which, after that, you're just carrying around a hunk of metal. But if you do have a way to charge it, it can fly, shoot lasers, shoot missiles. It's highly lethal. It has great defense because it's literally a suit of armor. And potentially, the most useful thing here is not what you would expect at all. In one of the weirdest and most baffling choices, in Iron Man 2, it's confirmed that the suit can... Well, it can convert human urine into water that is drinkable. Weird. But it cannot be understated how useful this would be. Something that I haven't talked about yet. This would be good for hunting, for food and stuff. It really depends if the power grid is still working. Because if it is, it's the Iron Man suit, but if it's not, it's definitely the lightsaber. But I say it's kind of more likely that it isn't, so... I'm sorry, Tony. I gotta give it to the lightsaber. Last one we have is the Harry Potter wand versus the Ant-Man suit. I gotta be honest, this was thrown in because I realized that the victor of this fight would be left with nobody to fight. Alright, so these two. Let's first look at Harry Potter. Now, this is almost incredibly unfair because unless we do the forbidden spells, unforgivable curses, none of his spells are lethal. The closest thing Harry has is like that block spell or whatever he uses whenever he fights Voldemort. But unless he uses Avada Kedavra, the instant kill, it's non-lethal. Oh, and I just remembered, unless you're born with this ability, you can't do magic. Harry should just be disqualified at this point. I would almost say Ant-Man wins by default, but I should explain it. So, yeah, there's of course the meme, but I believe Marvel even addressed it once, saying that to explode someone from the inside out, his skeleton would have to be thicker and more durable than whoever he's exploding, since his body would have to go through whatever he's exploding. But I guess zombies would have weaker skeletons, so ew. But if we're going with things that are actually canon, I think his best bet would to be constantly Giant Man. But even then, would this really work? Sure, it would be effective at killing. All it takes is really a drop of blood for him to die, and he basically has no attack. He doesn't even fire guns. But out of sheer luck, Ant-Man survives. He won't for long. So, when coming up for weapons for this list, I thought, what better weapon to use than the weapon probably most well known for beating up zombies? The bat with nails and barbed wire in it. Okay, I just looked it up. Apparently it has a name and it's called Lucille. Okay. Yeah, I feel like this would work. Effective as a melee weapon. To splatter brains, I think it would work. I've never seen The Walking Dead, so that's kind of all I have to say. Now, let's look at Batman. I'm trying to speed things up a little bit, but let's look at it. We're looking at the Batsuit. This has a bunch of gadgets. With every iteration, it has different things, but it always has, like, Batarang and grappling hook. Then we can theorize that it probably has some kind of a tear gas, or pepper spray or something. And I think it would be effective as, like, a defense. Can't really get bitten through it, so... I mean, unless it's cloth, but at that point, skill issue. It has some good weapons, but, again, non-lethal, because Batman doesn't kill. If this thing had a few guns, maybe a couple of knives, it would have a chance at beating Lucille in terms of good weapon. But ultimately, I have to give it to the Bat. Next one we're looking at is the Chaos Emerald from Sonic, or the Sling Ring from Doctor Strange. I said that in the wrong order. Boy, I didn't think this through. The Sling Ring is kind of useless if you didn't learn magic. You need to learn magic from Kamar-Taj in order to use it. And if we just find one of these laying around, we can't use it. That's what I would have said if the MCU wasn't inconsistent and stupid. There have been plenty of characters who are not ever taught how to use magic, but yet they can open portals. So you know what? Just for that, I'm gonna say, if we find a sling ring, it's usable. To be fair, the non-magic users who have found sling rings can't do all the other stuff. They can only open portals. But as we see in Infinity War, if we open a portal and then close it around somebody, it would, like, cut wherever it closed. If the portal closed around their waist, they would be cut in half. So in theory, if you were quick enough, you could endlessly cut zombies in half. Also, if you need to get away from them, you can always teleport. It's small and compact, so it can fit into your pocket. If there's a horde of zombies, you can open a portal and send them to, like, I don't know, the bottom of the ocean. The only thing is, if you really get into trouble, or you need to fight, you might be cooked. Now, let's look at the Sonic Chaos Emeralds. So, the Chaos Emerald. It looks something like this. The only thing is that this thing sucks. You have to first collect all of these emeralds in order to combine them and make him the big one, the Master Emerald, which could give you unlimited power, which is awesome. The problem is that you can easily lose this power. If Sonic gets punched too hard, he can lose this entire power. It's big and clunky and you have nowhere to store it. So if you lose it, it's pretty much game over. Although, while you have it, it's pretty OP. And finally, in the movies, they're rated PG. But even when Sonic and Shadow were in Super and punching each other across the earth, they couldn't kill each other. Honestly, I think I gotta give this to Doctor Strange. Sticking with things from video games, we have the Portal Gun versus Ghost Rider's Fire Whip. I'm actually dumb. His Fire Whip, if you're not a Ghost Rider, would just be a chain. Granted, using a chain as a weapon is pretty cool. You can easily hurt yourself, and there's nowhere to store it, unless it's wrapped around your body. If it has spikes on it, I guess that could be cool. It would be lethal, and it can be used at close and long range. Actually, I think there is a pretty good case, but I don't think compared to the Portal Gun. You can obviously teleport around. You can also teleport enemies. Go to New Jersey. Actually, it's less powerful than the Doctor Strange portal because you can't portal to New Jersey, you can only portal to wherever you can see. So it might be useful, but I actually might have spoke too soon. I think I have to give this one to Ghost Rider. Next up, we have the sword from Kill Bill versus Ash Williams' combo of a shotgun and chainsaw. I know the two aren't connected, as one of them is his hand, but he dual wields them. Let's start with the sword. What's special about this here is that it's nearly indestructible. It's longer range than the machete or the lightsaber we looked at earlier. It has a place that you can store it. It's highly lethal and known for killing a lot of people at once. Compare this to the chainsaw shotgun combo. I know this is actually just a dull sword and a musket, but close enough. The thing here is that if you run out of fuel or ammunition, you're donezo. What's good is that it's both close range and long range. Going back to the negatives, similar to Bucky, you kinda already have to be down a hand because the chainsaw is his hand. But I guess you don't technically have to be. Now it would just be more inconvenient. It would probably require two hands and be very heavy and straining. I don't think it would do a ton of damage because you'd have to run around, carry it around, and those things are heavy. I say this is the second worst thing yet. The real savior here is the shotgun. At least it's, a weapon. But I don't think this would be great at hitting a bunch of zombies one by one. I have to give this to the katana. Our second to last on our bracket here, we have Dr. Octopus versus Green Goblin. And once again, there's something that kind of destroys both of them. Fuel. But Doc Ock arms have a generator, while Green Goblin's glider would run off of fuel. Let's look at Doc Ock first. His arms can be used to walk. It can be used in long range, close range, and don't really need to be concealed. They would be lethal, and you could fight multiple enemies at once. The thing is, if the core is destroyed, your whole plan is destroyed. Now look at Green Goblin. He has a glider with, blades and bombs, and the pumpkin bombs, which he has separately. It would be useful to fly over the zombies and, throw bombs at them, but you're gonna eventually run out of bombs and fuel for the glider. Honestly, in, a day, he's cooked. I'm giving the point to Doc Ock. And lastly, we have Hawkeye and his bow and arrow, and Falcon and his wing. If you're wondering what happened to his other wing, he fell off the top of the tower, and I only found one of his wings. And both of them experience the same problem I've been mentioning. Whether it's running out of PIM particles, or fuel, both of them have a finite amount of their power. Hawkeye is eventually going to run out of arrows, especially his most effective kind of arrow, the exploding ones. At least the regular ones he can get back. Speaking of which, I believe we've seen exploding arrows, arrows that shrink, arrows that grow, and regular arrows. We saw the arrows that shrink and grow in the Hawkeye show. And what they do there is they shoot a exploding arrow and then shoot that with a growing arrow, I guess, to make the explosion bigger. Sure, why not? And Falcon is just there. He can fly above enemies and shoot them. Again. But he'll run out of fuel. Again. Even if it's a temporary victory, I gotta give it to Hawkeye. And that's it for evaluating them individually. Now we gotta see which one comes out on top. Ugh, this is a long video. Jason Machete versus Spider-Man Web Shooter. Jason and his machete, or I guess just the machete. Fast, lethal, never runs out. But I think Spider-Man's Web Shooter is faster. It's not lethal, and it does run out, but it's way more useful. If I was given the option, I would definitely take this. Claws and billy clubs, definitely gotta be claws. They're lethal, and the billy clubs are not. Ant-Man versus lightsaber, obviously the lightsaber. I'm just now realizing we're gonna have a three-way face-off. Oh well. Barbed wire bat versus sling ring, obviously sling ring. Ghost Rider's chain whip thing versus the katana. I mean, we basically see this fight in Kill Bill 1. I didn't think the katana would make it this far. Hawkeye bow and arrow versus Doc Ock arms. Look, would it be awesome to have an infinite supply of arrows just mowing down hordes of zombies? That would be awesome, but no, because there is, after all, a finite amount. Dr. Octopus arms run off a generator, we already know that, so they win. Final 6. Any way you slice it, we're gonna have a three-way battle. So let's do these three first. Alright, would I rather have web shooters, claws, or lightsaber? And I'm kinda surprised claws made it this far. We talked about all the disadvantages and it still made it this far. Really, it's up to these two. And for the fact that it runs out, it's non-lethal, and I guess easily breakable. Except I didn't talk about that earlier. I have to send Spider-Man back home, giving it to Luke. Okay, we have Doc Ock arms, sling ring, and katana. I'm surprised any of them made it this far. Just because of the weak point, I think we have to finally eliminate Doc Ock. How this seemingly indestructible sword would be so useful, but I gotta give it to the portals. Just pretend that sentence made any type of sense and we're good. This brings us to the final battle. So, lightsaber versus sling ring, it's lightsaber. Assuming there's no other lightsabers, and this is the only one, there's nothing to counter it. So it's basically unstoppable. So, that's it. I don't know if I agree with that. What if there was a sustainable supply of energy? What if webs never run out? Or it's like in the Toby movies where he makes it organically. What if we found a way to keep making arrows? Honestly, I don't think I'm satisfied. I mean, it's a pretty solid answer, but I feel like there's more to explore. Maybe I'll make a part 2 to this, where I attack it a different way. Or maybe I'll make a part 2 where I make another bracket. Who knows? Leave your ideas in the comments on what other ways I can determine this. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time.